The first thing we have coming up is going to be John Lake, who's going to give us an update on Division of Marine Fisheries. And here's John.
Scott actually originally asked me to come in to talk about summer flounder, but I love scup so much that I thought we'd start with that. Actually, I thought we could go through scup really quick because it gives a great example of the new way they're managing wreck fisheries. Do a brief update on black sea bass, and then we can jump into summer flounder. So really quick, y'all, those of you that come to our meetings probably saw this last year, but Scup had a stock assessment in 2023, and stock biomass is above the reference point. That's the blue solid curve right here. Reference point is the solid red line. As you can see, the Scup spawning stock biomass is doing quite well. In fact, Scup is not overfished, and overfishing is not occurring. So overfishing refers to the fishing mortality rate, not full harvest. That's the exploitation rate about how many removals are going on. So we're not below that, we're not above that threshold either. One thing about Scup is recruitment has been lower in recent years. However, with such a big spawning stock biomass, it's not a large concern. So we did exceed the recreational harvest levels coastwide substantially between 2020 and 2022. So each year we set a recreational harvest level that tells coastwide how many fish can be harvested by recreational fishing, and we use that to set our regulations and then also to do future management. Okay, so what we're working on now is it's called percent change approach. Okay, and what it does is it looks at two things to determine what the regulations should be in the upcoming years. First off, we look at what the projected harvest is compared to the recreational harvest level. So we can do projections of harvest level based on models on size limits, bag limits, and seasons. I can tell you when that happens, it's always the season that it moves the pile more discreetly than things like a size limit. A size limit will really make a big change to any recreational fishing. A bag limit doesn't really make a big change once it gets very high. And days fished really is usually where we try to move our regulations. Try to avoid size changes, just keep those more stable. However, we do have to change them, and we did in fact for Scup here. So like I said, we look at the projected harvest based on the RHL, or we'll even go back and look at previous year's harvest as well, based on the RHL. Did we exceed, or did we hit it right on the nose, rarely, or did we go under the RHL? The other thing they look at is the biomass level, that spawning stock biomass I was telling you about before. We look at where it is compared to the reference point, or the threshold there. So in the case of Scup, I'll just go back a slide. So in the case of Scup here, we have a very high spawning stock biomass, and here's our target level, or our reference level. So we're very high above it, okay? So right here we're going to look at, so this is how we do our guidelines. So we follow the category that projected harvest is higher than RHL. Like I said, we did exceed the RHL the last 2 years coastwide, but the biomass compared to reference level is very high. So the guidance given by the new model is to reduce by 10%. And in fact, we did take a 10% reduction in Scup last year. Those who were tuned in, we did raise our size limit to 11 fish, and we raised our shore limit to 9.5 inch size limit. So Scup, I know at our meetings it puts people to sleep right away, but it is a good example on how we are managing fish because it really fell in those guidelines. For 2025, it looks like there is a slight increase, 4% in the RHL, so they're going to increase our RHL. 4% really isn't much of a change, so coastwide. So I expect status quo for Scup next year. But stay tuned. All of our regs, we start doing our workshop for recreational Scup, fluke, and sea bass, usually in November, December time frame. So stay tuned, you'll hear more about this. But just an early preview, Scup doesn't look like a change. So black sea bass. So black sea bass is right now. My understanding is it's all but done, but there's a new management track assessment in this year, 2024. As y'all know, we stayed status quo 2024. We didn't make any changes to our rec regs. Right now, so if you look here, we have biomass, spawning stock biomass on the left, fishery mortality or exploitation rate on the right. So as you can see, it's no secret, black sea bass biomass coastwide has been increasing substantially. And the exploitation rate is right there, right around our target. So that's good news. It's been there since, bouncing around since 2010. I will say that this stock assessment, however, does project that there has been a decline in spawning stock biomass, and recruitment has been low compared to future years. So there might be a reduction coming. We hear rumors of that. My hope, and Corinne Truesdale, my co-supervisor, she manages CMAS. It's our hope that the change will be slight enough that we really don't see it in our regulations. But stay tuned for December when we have our workshop. We'll have more information there. Stock biomass, right here, the orange spawning stock biomass, it's below our threshold here, but it's above. Sorry, it's below the target, but it's above the threshold. Although the threshold means big action is needed, but it's right there, just below it. The stock is overfished, but overfishing is occurring. So we did the fishing mortality rate target was, I believe, 0.48 0.45, and coastwide we did hit 0.46. So we are slightly above the overfishing threshold there. Not much, but we are over it. But as you all know, recreational harvest level was reduced from 10.2 million fish to 6.35 million fish in 2023. And we did take a 28% reduction this last year. As you all know, we went up to a 19-inch fish with a 6 fish bag limit. And if you're calling me talking about how some things move the percent reduction or increase we're allowed to take, why are we at 6 fish? Well, after 3 fish, really not too many people catch more than 3 fish according to our surveys. And so you can have 4 or 5 fish. It wouldn't really move the numbers that much unless we went down to something like a 2 fish bag limit. So instead, we got a really big reduction by going up to 19 inches. And our special shore 19-inch 2 at 17 fish. So that achieved our 28% reduction by increasing the size instead of the bag limits. And we do have a season now. We have April 1st to December 31st. Although really, let's face it, April's not really a big fluke month, so we're not getting much movement there. Fluke is kind of boring this year. Recreational harvest limit is going to remain the same as 2024 for 2025. It will be a 6.35 million target there. Harvest limit. So what does that do for our management? So we're going to have the same recreational harvest limit. Well, actually, Fluke, we've been coastwide. This is all coastwide here. We've been under the RHL for the past 2 years, actually for the past 3 years, and as well as the resulting allowable catch limit. So we have been down below the RHL. But if you recall, we look at 2 things. We look at how the fishery is performing, how the catch rates are coming in relative to recreational harvest level. But we also look at that biomass, right? So the biomass would be considered low for compared to the threshold. And just to go back to that SCUP slide, that kind of puts us, right, so we have the harvest is lower than our RHL, but we're low 10%. So it says liberalized 10%, but with the fishing mortality rate over, just slightly over the target there, Corinne said that likely we're going to see no changes for Fluke next year. And probably not going to get that 10% liberalization coastwide. Stay tuned, but like I said, we'll talk more about this in December. But it looks like right now, they just did a big reduction in RHL. We don't know what our catch is from 2024 yet, so it looks like it's probably going to be status quo for next year based on this percent change. Sorry, I'm sucking at the mic. You know, I will tell you, I had this discussion over the winter as well. So I will say, when they do the stock assessments and the calculations for setting the regs, they're very rigid. And because we really exceeded that recreational harvest level, that's why it kicked in. Now, in my opinion, it's kind of a catch-22, especially with scup. The more scup that are out there, the more recreational harvest is going to be. And let me tell you, my staff measures and samples a lot of scup on the shore and from private rental mode. So in my opinion, we are harvesting a bunch because there's a bunch out there, and I think the recreational harvest levels need to catch up with that. You can see on the scup slide, since the 2000 teens, the biomass has exploded for scup. And one could argue similar to black sea bass as well. The RHLs just haven't caught up yet to it. That's one thing I think is going on there. So. Anybody else? Sorry to bore you with a bunch of management first on. Right on. All right, well, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks, folks.